Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon. My name is Philip Yi-Chun, Deputy Director General of Taiwan CDC. My heart is still racing because I just left my flight 1 hour ago. So it's just not a fast-track city, but also a fast-track movement. But thank you very much for inviting me to talk about Taiwan's story of achieving the 390s. As a government official, I used to talk about like a story of how to become successful and all these successful policies. But I changed my tone today because I want to discuss this story as the more non-traditional way, especially given the fact that we have just undergone our very important human rights movement, that is the LGBT marriage rights legalization 5 to 10 years ago. And that very much was linked to our HIV policy change. So today I will emphasize more on the evolution of our HIV policy change in the context of human rights movement, especially during the same-sex marriage campaign. And I believe a lot of countries in the region are also undergoing this kind of human rights movement. So hopefully this talk can give you some ideas about the struggle and the growth and how those struggle and the growth move our agenda forward and make the partnerships grow stronger. Next slide. Here? The green button, okay. So the following 3 slides are the traditional way of presentation. I show you the data. You see the blue line of up and down, that's the HIV trend in Taiwan. Predominantly among MSM, we experienced HIV surge and a drop in the past decade. But you can also see the improving 390s from the color shade of orange to green associated with declining HIV trend after 2017. We reached the 390s in 2020 and also the 295s, the last 295s in 2022. And the easy way of telling the story is, well, we saw HIV increase. So in 2016, we ran several important programs, including self-testing, PrEP, and the treat all ART recommendation, which are also emphasizing my colleague in the previous talk from Philippines. And these programs were successful, so they resulted in very good HIV control. That's the end. But if you think it's too simple, I can give you more details. Of course, it's related to very strong partnerships among public health authorities, healthcare providers, and also NGOs that work hand in hand in providing integrated services and networks featured by being convenient, accessible, confidential, comprehensive, and with peer supporting resources. Those sounds very perfect, right? It's a very ideal model. And if you want more example, I can give you this flow chart of PrEP program demonstrating how the clients were enrolled and evaluated. The items range from HIV prevention to drug addiction and mental health, and again demonstrating the strong partnerships among healthcare providers, health department, and the community. How wonderful. But the reality is government's programs do not change spontaneously. That's my take-home message. And partnerships are not built without context. The HIV surge and the drop period overlapped closely with Taiwan's same-sex marriage rights movement, and key population had been highly visible throughout the campaign until May 2019, when same-sex marriage was legalized in Taiwan. The visibility and the voice for equal rights during an uprising HIV trend resulted in hot debate of HIV-related issues in both positive and negative ways. The unprecedented attention and the politician support had driven Taiwan CDC to change, adjust the conventional HIV programs to meet communities' needs, which in return gained community support and further strengthened the partnerships. And looking back the history, HIV policy change in Taiwan has commonly been driven by human rights movement or cause. This is a summary of those events, key events labeled in different colors. The red boxes indicate human rights setback events, such as student expelled from school because of HIV status, minister gave discriminating statement, or local neighborhood forced HIV shelter home to move. Purple boxes are the NGO actions, or so-called the community voice. And green boxes are government's progress in human rights protection. I'm not going to details, but in general, you can see in early years is the emergence of red boxes that triggers lots of these purple boxes, or so-called the community voice, which resulted in the law change in 1997 and 2007 for rights protection. But after that, still the setbacks events continued. And thanks to the progress in gender equity and other general human rights protection areas, they empowered the community to unite as Taiwan AIDS Action Alliance in 2011 for further law change. A milestone was reached in 2015 when the parliament eventually removed the notorious ban on HIV-positive foreigners' entry and stay. And later on, the community's momentum overlapping with the same-sex marriage campaign were maintained, and also maintained after same-sex marriage campaign too. And that resulted in another success in 2021, which pushed U equals U forward as a legally endorsed criteria for HIV non-disclosure decriminalization in Taiwan. And as where we are standing at 2024, there has already been a general anti-discrimination law draft targeted against racial, religious, sexual, age, and disability discrimination that has been published by the Prime Minister's office, waiting for being sent into the parliament. There is also ongoing advocacy for full decriminalization of HIV non-disclosure and the removal of gay blood donation ban in Taiwan. Focusing on the same-sex marriage movement period, it was featured by politically active opponents, mostly represented by conservative and religious groups. The opponents' HIV agenda followed the community's success in removal of foreigners' ban, but manipulated the messages as a threat to our healthcare system, using misinformation like those foreigners will marry Taiwanese for health insurance, same-sex marriage will speed up HIV spread. HIV became top of the conservatives' three opposed agenda. Lots of HIV-related misinformation were circulating online, predominantly targeting at the elderly populations, in contrast to the community's youth-targeted equity campaign, such as HIV plus OK, meaning I'm fine with your HIV-positive status. Ironically, the misinformation outbreak triggered a bigger wave of equity supporters' action to address HIV stigma and the challenges faced by the community. On the right-hand side, you see an example of an actor performing as I am HIV positive in the busiest corner of Taipei City, and he was inviting public feedback. He received in total more than 100 hugs and 42 encouraging messages, no vicious message at all. This shows a counterforce during that time highlighted by love and inclusiveness. This table summarizes HIV-related damage during the movement, especially misinformation and the discriminating statement. You know, it was like a war with escalating tension. Every day, CDC and NGOs had to deal with overwhelming workload for clarification, anger, anxiety, frustration from both sides. However, throughout the process, we grew up and learned a few precious lessons, such as try hard to think of a constructive response, not just emotional. For example, they worry that the PrEP would increase high-risk behaviors, and the conservatives don't want government to spend money on that. Instead of telling them, well, don't spread misinformation anymore, don't be stupid, we responded that CDC would integrate preventive services and counseling into PrEP to lower the risk they worry about. That's a more positive way to address their worries rather than just emotional responses. Furthermore, I think the most important lesson learned was that people don't like being lectured, but they would rather like to hear personal stories, especially stories told by those who own the story. During that time, the community's self-stories were voiced out loudly against widespread stigma and hate, and since then have motivated lots of KOLs and the music stars to stand up supporting the community. But it would be very wrong if I give you the impression that Taiwan is already a wonderland. We are still far away from that. Our first 95 and the late diagnosis was still challenging. And the major reason for that is the prevalence stigma and the barriers as shown in this recent poll and the survey in Taiwan. Especially the shocking result that 25.7% of the respondents have been declined by a healthcare provider, meaning lots need to be changed in the medical community. Therefore, this year, in addition to expanding PrEP and providing long-acting agent, we are also working on a pilot project to encourage friendly healthcare services for needs beyond ART. Last but not the least, as you can see, more than 60% of respondents were worried about getting old. We keep working with the authorities and NGOs to mobilize long-term care resources for the community. Before closing, I want to give special thanks to the healthcare providers and NGO participants from Taiwan. Without your long-standing advocacy for change, the government would not have changed in such a positive direction. I hope all of you remember my take-home message. Government programs do not change spontaneously. You have to make them change. Thank you.